Well, today we celebrate St. Scholastica, and we continue with our reading from Genesis, and just kind of hearing this reading. You know, there is so much going on in this story, right? And every culture has an origin story, right? And they differ, and in some ways they're similar. And in the Abrahamic Near Eastern religions, there are the origin stories. And so in this one, you consider what's happening, the different characters involved. You have the talking serpent, the talking snake. You have woman, you have man. But look in the details of the account of the story, and you start to see all these nuances that help us to understand why this would be meaningful in Christianity. And so, there is this conversation that Eve has with the snake that would later be characterized as Satan, as being an image of Satan, and she loses trust in her heavenly Father, right? And so the church says that humanity is created in natural communion with God. Natural communion with God meaning that there is a natural relationship to God as Father, that there is a peaceful relationship. This is before the fall from grace. There's even the depiction of God anthropomorphized, walking, as it were, in the Garden of Eden, in paradise, and Adam is able to kind of catch up with him and stuff. And so there is this natural communion, and humanity is just forbidden to do one thing, which is to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, right? And so so Eve does that. She chooses to turn away from God here. And one of the images that we use for different kinds of sin in the church, this is just an image, but one image is that if you're facing God, if you turn 45 degrees from God, then it's like venial sin. You turn halfway. If you turn all the way with your back toward God, that's like mortal sin. So to turn our backs on God, that would be mortal sin. And so Adam and Eve commit mortal sin. They had been told to do something. They turned against God, and in doing that, a few different things happen. So one of the interesting details here is they realize they are naked. They realize they're not clothed. And so there's a shame that develops. And so another thing is that the idea that Adam and Eve relate to each other with normal desire, right? But they don't have lust yet. And so lust is, if you look at the definition, the Catechism of the Catholic Church has a definition of lust. It's that inordinate sexual desire or an excessive kind of sexual desire. So it's inordinate, which means it's disordered. So Adam and Eve don't have that use of each other, that brokenness in their sexual relationship yet. They don't have that brokenness. And then what happens after the fall? Well, you think about all the things that Genesis records. So you have Cain slaying Abel. You have all of this brokenness that has a ripple effect, right? You throw a stone into the water, and the ripples go out and out and out and out and out. And that's what happens, is that there is a ripple effect where this brokenness in Adam and Eve's obedience to their father results in all of this brokenness down the line. And one of the areas that brokenness has really made its mark in human life is in the area of lust. So the church has never condemned sexual relations, but there is an understanding of their meaningfulness. And, some things are going to be broken, they're going to stay broken, and some things aren't. And so, there's a lot in that. There's a lot in that. And I do want to throw a plug out for something, that a lot of times Catholics will, they'll say, oh, Father, I watched a movie that had nudity in it or something, or, and that's, not, nudity is not always bad. That's not always a sin, okay? Okay, but because of our brokenness, we attribute brokenness to things that are not necessarily broken. But there is a rightful place. You go to the Vatican, there's a lot of statues, there's a lot of art that has the unclothedness. Part of that is that it is a reminder of the goodness and the beauty that God created us in that we chose to break. And so you can let that be a reminder to you. And so you don't find sin in every single thing, okay? We don't find sin every single thing. It's not that every single thing is full of sin, it's that we are so broken that we cannot relate healthily to anything. It's very sad that way, but we are so damaged that we struggle to avoid imputing our own meanness to everything that we run into and encounter. And so, there's art, there's music and stuff that's going to contain themes that is going to challenge us and upset us. That's actually sort of the purpose of art. At times is to upset us and to challenge our paradigms, but be able to understand it and experience it as a Christian, as a Catholic. And so today we encounter our gospel as well. And so there is a theme here that sort of connects with our first reading. And Jesus is encountering this man who is deaf. He has a speech impediment. And so this little ritual that happens, right, he takes him aside and he's kind of, feeling around his head and all that. And then he says, Ephphatha, that is, be opened, okay? Well, so there were different kinds of prayer rituals that maybe would have resembled that the Jewish leaders might have used. But the word he uses, be opened, is similar. You think about when he resuscitates Lazarus and he says, Lazarus, come out and be opened, right? That there is this connection with resurrection theology, that he's in a sense resurrecting the man, he's renewing the man, he's freeing him from his burden of his disabilities or his struggles that are preventing him from being able to live with full health. And so it says that this happens, he's healed. And so there is a resurrection theme. And so we have to go back to the first reading now, right? There is nature and there is redemption. So God creates us, that's nature. That's not really grace so much, but then he renews, he redeems his creation through Jesus Christ. And so that's supernature, that's being lifted up, that is being elevated. So in this scene, that in the gospel, that he heals and restores this man. And so this healing that this individual receives is like an image of the kind of healing of the whole human race that Jesus does through his passion and death on the cross. And so as we continue this day and week, just kind of being grateful, I encourage you to be grateful for the gift of God's healing, and to remember that physical healing that is experienced is a sign of interior healing, interior forgiveness that he wants to give to us, to continue to seek that healing and to not place the physical above the spiritual, right? But to allow ourselves to want to more and more become disciples, be people that are restored by Christ, that can relate to things healthily, and to relate to things healthily and allow ourselves to become more and more Christ people.